today we're going to put in, I apologize, I can't get the camera much further back than this, but we're going to put in this lower right fender section here. It's the rear section of the fender. So again, front of the car, here's the door, and here's the fender section right here. You can see up here, there it is. That's where the emblem goes for the Karmann Ghia. And it's got a little bit of rust here, and it's got a hole. I took out all the rust, and there's still some pits in there, but the metal's in decent shape. I'd like to keep it if I can, just because the detail around here might be hard to reproduce. What I'll probably do is weld this section in, and then try and weld this little hole up right there. And if it doesn't weld, if it doesn't take, if the metal's really just too bad, I'll recreate that section. I'll show everybody how I do that. But first things first, the important thing to do is maintain this gap down the door all the way around here with our new panel. And so I had to do a little adjustment to this A-pillar, just hammering it out and everything. So you want to make sure the gap is good here and nice and even all the way down before you even really start fitting up the patch panel. So I've done that. Then the other thing is the edge of this patch panel, they make these a little thicker than what you'll need. Right here we're talking, it's maybe a little more than 1/8 of an inch there, and this is probably a little more than 1/4 of an inch here. So we'll have to trim this back to fit, but it's nice they give us a little bit extra material. The other thing is this piece here folds back underneath with a hammer and dolly, but this piece here is not, it needs to fold back too, but when it comes out of the press it's not stretched. So we're going to have to stretch that piece so that it will fold in there, so our door will close and all of that kind of fun stuff. So I'm going to pull out the shrinker stretcher probably and stretch this little piece out in here so that it'll lay flat when I hammer it back around. So we'll start fitting the piece up now, and I'll show you what I do as I go along. I squished this one time on a stretcher, and I need a straight edge here. Do it with that. And you can see maybe how I've got a gap under here, just hitting it one time on the stretcher. So what I've got to do is fold this back, and the critical piece was here, but I'm going to fold this back in an effort to straighten this back out and give it the curve. So what I'm trying to do is straighten here and use that, stretch here and use that stretch here in the corner. So you can't really get in here to stretch with the stretcher because it's a flat tool. So that's what I'm doing. What I've got here is a cold chisel in the vise, and I'm going to use it to you can see that starting to pull that in here. So the further we go, the more that's going to make a difference. One thing to keep in mind as I'm fitting up this panel, I'm trying to get the light right, I drew a line across here, and it's where our panel here is. You don't have to use this whole panel, and in fact this area up here gets into that logo that's right there. So I'm going to cut it off just below these lines, and I made sure this piece is actually a pretty well made piece. The divot up here lines up with the hole that's already in front, and the one in the back lines up with the one in the back. So it's a good fitting piece. I'm going to cut right below those for fitting purposes, and that leaves me another 1/4 of an inch that I can trim up here or on the panel. So I'm going to cut this first a little bit shy of where I need to be, or a little bit long of where I need to be, and then we'll adjust from there, and I'll fit the rest of the panel. Okay, now we've got our panel trimmed down here, so we're going to fit it up against the car. What it does, the smaller you make these panels, the closer they fit, you know, because when the metal overlaps one panel, it causes something else not to fit. So the smaller you make this overlap, the better it's going to fit and the better idea you're going to have. And you really do want to trim these real slow, because if you over trim, you either got to weld metal back on or you got to start with a new piece. So fortunately this piece is a real easy one to make, so if we screw it up, I'm confident we can make another one of these in half an hour, 45 minutes, but then you got to go back through and refit everything, which actually the fitting takes a lot longer than making the panel. But I think we're in good shape here. We'll fit it up over on the car. We're taking a look at, I think we can see that in the camera, that gap right there. It's looking pretty good. I think the only difference from, you know, up here to down here is our overlap here. This isn't fitting very well here, so we'll have to straighten out that curve. Oh, you can't see that on the camera. There we go. This curve doesn't fit real well, so we'll have to hammer and dolly that once we get this on. We'll grab that tight against there. Down on the bottom, see what that does. Looks like we've got just a little trimming up in here that needs to happen, and this panel is about ready to weld on. The one last little kind of detail I noticed on this, just trying to get a look at it there, is this lip isn't exactly straight where it needs to be. The bottom end of that lip is about 1/8 of an inch off. So what I'm going to do, I've got a, I don't know if this is a 3 or 4 inch pipe here, but we're just going to just rolling it over there just a little bit more. Probably have to do that 2 or 3 times. Just wanted to go through all the things I've had to do to this panel. So we had to trim this. We had to actually move this edge, angle it in just a little bit this way. I'm exaggerating that. It was probably a little bit over 1/8 of an inch, probably closer to 1/4 of an inch by the time it was all said and done. Had to stretch this piece out here. Then when I got it on the car, if this is straight to the body, when I clamped everything down, it was bending in. So what that told me was, this radius was wrong. This radius was too shallow, so it was, when I clamped it on, it was bending it in. So I did a little shrink along this edge to kind of pooch that out. You can see the panel is now got a little warp to it, but when you clamp it on, that warp straightens out when you clamp this. So there'll be a little tension in this panel, but there's nothing wrong with that. So quite a few things. Now, I've gone through and ground off the back side here, and I'm going to set this up to the car over here. I'll mark with either a scratch awl or a marker. I'll mark along the back side, and we'll trim this to fit so we can butt weld it in. The last thing I'm going to have to do is hammer and dolly this edge to fit the front edge over there, because it doesn't. We're officially ready to weld this in now. I poked a bunch of holes in the bottom here, so you'll see the gap up here fits real tight. What I'm going to do is tack this in first, and then we'll pull this down and it'll pull all the panels real taut. have it, the finished product there, all butt welded along there, a few 5-spot welds along there, and then here in the joint between the rocker panel and that front fender, we did it just like Volkswagen did at the top and at the bottom, and then I guess we'll put seam sealer in there and put plenty of paint on there to make sure it doesn't rust in the future. So now I have to get in to this joint here and hammer all that metal back in there, so I'll probably have to take the door off to do that. But let's look at the door gap with our new panel. That door gap just looks absolutely perfect, so really pleased with that. Okay, one quick last detail here. I think I've got enough light. I hope I've got enough light. We're looking at the back side here, so that was where that 90 degree was that I wanted to do some stretching before I installed this panel. It folds all the way around the back there and then kind of lays a little bit more flat there in the flat spot, but it bends quite a bit. And if you were to try and start some of those bends without stretching, it could potentially warp that outside panel, but you want to be sure and do all of that after you weld, because the weld will hold it in place and allow you to stretch even more than what you've already stretched. So there we have it. I think all that's left to do is grind down the weld.